Today, I have a very interesting guest for you, and I'm so excited to tell you about her as she's waiting to come into our wonderful show today. I want to, give you a little feedback about who she is. So her name is Amanda Kate, and she's an author of Divine, Messy, Human, a spiritual guide to prioritizing internal truth over external influence. She's a kinesiologist, mentor, archetypal life coach, which I'm not sure what that is. We'll have to ask her. She's a mother and more, a recovering people pleaser. Is that not cute? A self-flagellator. She walks the path straddling the divine and messy daily. I have to tell you guys, hearing this bio really hit me. I love that line. She straddles this path between the divine and the messy. Isn't that what we all do? So I just had to side note that. She's always growing, developing, and learning new ways of being to hopefully one day leave the earth a better place than when she found it. What a great bio. Amanda Kate helps people to regain their vitality, smashing through their internal glass ceiling and limitations to find new levels of health, vitality, and abundance. She also works with business owners, that would be me, to increase their vibration and attract greater wealth and prosperity. She lives in Melbourne, Australia with her twin flame. I love that. Her children, his children, and a dog named Zeus. And I just want to put a little side note into which we will be asking Amanda Kate about kinesiology, but I just want to give a little background about, just to frame it for you, that kinesiology uses your body's biofeedback system through the application of like precision muscle monitoring and doing this kind of thing where she applies a unique strategy, which we're going to have her explain how to locate what's happening in your body and find the root cause. And it really is, has been kind of put on the side as a way of managing pain and different things in life, which I think now science is catching up. And I shouldn't say science, I should say human beings are catching up. Our culture is catching up with the value of all of these very important ways of working with the body and emotions that we have labeled woo-woo. And we've kind of really made them seem like they're not valuable. And I'm against that. And I want to wake people up to real life work, medically, spiritually, in terms of education, that we have bought the lie very, very often of many, many antiquated systems that just fit in a box where we all have to kind of walk this path of mediocrity. I know that Amanda Kate is going to lead you down a path of excellence and opening your mind to a unique perspective on your body, on life, on spirituality, on what you can and cannot have in your life. And I want to really showcase that and have you guys just hone in, apply this to yourself. Here, don't just immediately shut it out because it's something that maybe culturally hasn't been fully accepted. What I do want to tell you is that over the next, I say year, it could be 5 years, our entire systems that run our culture they're going to change, because medically we got some real serious issues. Educationally, we have some real serious issues. We have put aside grassroots real life help that actually is preventative and changes our life. And we've kind of put things on a pedestal that we don't understand and that no one really explains to us. And we just follow what everyone else is doing, and no more. So without any further ado, we're going to invite Amanda Kate in to educate us and teach us how to just be happier and more abundant. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Allison from Allison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. As you heard me rave about Amanda Kate and the fascinating way that she's going to educate and open our minds and our hearts to kinesiology and the way our spirituality and physiology and who knows, emotionality or whatever the hell she's going to tell us. She's going to really, really, I just would like to say that off camera, when I was speaking with Amanda Kate, I was just so blessed I just felt this immediate connection to her. I feel like she really, really is aligned with everything that we're doing and everything that, we talk about here. And the thing that showcases so much to me is the title of her book, Divine, Messy, Human. And it's like with periods in between: divine, period; messy, period; human, period. And isn't that what we really all are? And I'm just so looking forward to not feeling as crazy anymore about how messy I am after speaking to this woman. So without any further ado, I just want to just say welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad to have met you. And I think you're really special.
Oh,
So,
thank you. No, it's definitely mutual.
yes. So what I would love to just begin with is if you could explain how this all began, because I know, I was going to say journey. I'm not saying journey. We were just discussing how like the word journey is so overused and so like annoying. So
Yeah.
basically how you have come to find your greatness really and your peace. Mm-hmm.
Oh, look, I think I'm still finding it. I think we all are those works in progress. But I guess it started with, as everyone's does with childhood, and our parents do the best they can with the tools they have. And I love my parents dearly and they love me. And also understanding now what I do about trauma and how we individualize our experience of what's going on around us, that I have internalized some trauma from the way I grew up. I was white, middle class, Church of England raised. We were, had to be good girls, behave in a certain way. There were high expectations of our performance in every area, our politeness, our good girl behavior. And I was just such a people pleaser. It really became a curse as much as anything. And I think for most people it does, because we're not doing it from a place of equality. We're putting ourselves in inferiority and everybody else in superiority. And then trying to make them happy, which as we know is a failing endeavor. And that was me pretty much my whole life. And then I went from this tightly controlled childhood, teenagehood, to I moved overseas with my sister for a little while. We went to the UK to do my working holiday visa, and I went off the rails for about, I don't know, 12, 18 months. It wasn't a long time. It was just, I partied, I felt free. I just wanted to explore who I could be, maybe.
Yeah.
And then I met a man, and we got engaged, got married, two beautiful children, beautiful house, international travel, all the things. And I was miserable as hell. It was breaking me. I felt like such a broken shell of a human being by about 2013. So we'd been together for 12 years at that point. We'd been married for 11. So we were 7 months together before we got engaged, and another 7 months for us to get married. And it was a hard relationship. And because my mum had always said relationships are hard work, I thought I was just getting an A
Oh
plus and
my God. Is that
overachieving
not a
when
trap? That's a
I'm
trap.
doing this beautifully. Oh, yeah.
That's a trap. I
Oh,
just
my God. Yeah.
highlighting that for any young
No,
people thinking getting married. If, yeah, it doesn't have to
I,
be hard.
no. And I think
Yeah.
it's really interesting being in a healthy relationship now. The hard is not the hard I expected it to be.
Yes.
The
Hmm.
hard is keeping the magic and mystery alive. It is staying present for the other person. It is staying connected. It is remaining respectful when, you want to call them out on stuff. It's recognizing your projections onto them and your expectations of them that are perhaps misled or led by your own or informed by your own trauma, that then you've got to shift those ideas. That's the hard part,
Yes.
is,
So good. That's so
not
true.
dumping our shit on
Yes.
them.
Yes.
It's not a hard of walking on eggshells, constantly changing goalposts, constantly being insulted and demeaned and diminished as a human being. It is not that abuse cycle. It's not that. And that is not love.
Mhm.
And that's what I experienced as love, was if you do not behave in a certain way, I will take my love away from you and I will treat you like a piece of crap.
Yeah.
And then if you make good enough amends, I may give you some attention again.
Wow.
And that is what emotional abuse is, and psychological
Yes.
abuse. It is, and that's what I lived for so long. And by about 2013, my body started breaking down. I was in chronic fatigue, and the chronic fatigue was literally because my body was so wound up. I was trying to hold everything together. I was trying to keep this facade of what our marriage looked like to the outside world up. I was trying to fix it enough that I could stay in it until my kids at least were through high school, because I thought, again, you stay together for the kids and all of this kind of BS stuff that we're fed. And as a woman, you're supposed to be selfless. You're not supposed to, be selfish. That's the worst thing you can be as a woman. And so, make less and less and less of yourself and make yourself smaller, because then you'll fit in easier and then you're more palatable. And isn't that life easy for everyone? And I was stuck in that mode, and I really, really struggled. And then it got to a point where I felt so broken. It was the beginning of 2015. I went and got a mental health care check, which meant that I could go and get some psychology sessions at a cheaper rate through the Medicare system over here. And when I rang the psychologist to book in, it was her receptionist really that I guess changed my world in so many different ways. She
Love
said, look,
that.
it's 4 weeks to get you in for the psychologist. It's 6 weeks to get you in for the mindfulness course that you want to do with the psychologist. She said, tell me what's going on for you. And I gave her the socially acceptable version, which was that we'd just emigrated to Australia, that my then husband was stuck in a job he didn't like, that I was trying to support him in his first move away from his family, that my daughter was struggling and had been struggling for a lot of years with sleep, with everything. She was ridiculously intelligent, still is. And so the only time she felt challenged was when she fought me.
Mm.
And so she would have up to 4-hour tantrums just because she didn't have butterflies on her shoes or her hair was done the wrong way. And she literally would not stop until I was in the fetal position on the floor crying. And the only thing doctors wanted to do to me was put me on antidepressants. And I'm like, no, I need help with my child because my
Yes.
child is suffering. Like, hello, it's not me that's the problem. And my son had been bullied at school. So, oh no, it wasn't bullying apparently, because it was different children doing it, but he was physically harmed 13 times in 26 weeks at a school that we'd moved him to, thinking that he'd be fine. And he went from this beautiful, bubbly, gorgeous boy who loved school to tummy aches. And she said, and who's got your back? And I just burst into tears. And I said, there's nobody. There's never been anyone. I've never had anyone who's got my back. And she said, yeah, how about you come and see someone a bit sooner? We can get you in with a kinesiologist. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but you know what? I'm desperate, willing to try anything, book me in.
Love it.
So, not just in her asking of the question, who's got your back, which really highlighted the fact that I did not have a good support system at all. And I certainly didn't have any support within the home. And then to get me in with this kinesiologist who, in our first session, she said, you have no idea how emotionally abused you are, do you? And I put some major relationships in my life and I went, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But I didn't see that my husband was my biggest abuser for another 4 months. I guess it was that thing of once you see it, you've got to do something about it.
Yes.
And that's terrifying. And
Yeah.
so subconsciously, I did not want to see that he was the main culprit. So I put people who were lesser on the scale of emotional
Yes.
abuse and went, yeah, you
Yes.
guys fit the bill.
Yes.
And then it took me another 4 months to leave the marriage, and that was just over 7 years ago now. But it was interesting because within that time, it was 6 months to the day after my first kinesiology session that I was sitting in the classroom. Because even though I hadn't left him yet, I just knew that this was what I had to do with my life.
Yep. I got it. You know, there's, as you're sharing these things, I can't
Mm.
help it. It's the therapist in me that's like,
Yeah.
I'm like dying to interrupt you,
Yes.
and I'm trying so hard not to.
You're
But
doing
there's
very good. You're sitting
probably,
on your
oh,
hands.
you have no idea. I'm like, oh my
I
God, let
can
me just
see
say
it.
something. But I
Yeah.
love what you're saying.
Go.
And I know that I just know that you already know this, but I just want to
Mm.
highlight it because I feel like there are
Oh, we need
probably
to for the
women listening
audience. Mm-hmm.
who, just the way that you describe that. So now
Mm.
you describe, I gave this socially acceptable answer. Now,
Mm.
understand, coming from a counseling center here, we get
Mm.
calls every day. We're getting on the phone. And this is what is so powerful,
Yeah.
is that you can see a problem in a family because children will express it.
Mm-hmm.
They will personify the abuse in another way. And
Yeah.
then sometimes parents, so then it's so important to recognize that
Mm.
you don't want to beat yourself up for it. But if you were in a bad situation,
Yeah.
this is what I want to ask you, because I kind of feel like
Mm.
I know it in a way, is that
Yeah.
when you want to hide that abuse,
Mm.
in some ways you aren't even thinking that you're hiding it.
No.
You know, it's the highlighting of, wow, this is the problem because this I can manage. Let me ask you, would it have meant to you then to know that you had an abusive husband? Like what would that have meant something about your identity to you?
It did,
Yeah.
because I lost everyone when I left.
Mm.
Because I'd done such a great job of hiding it, and he was covert narcissist, not overt narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
So he would take me, we'd go visit my parents, and he would take me into a bedroom where we'd be staying, and he would offload all the shit he hated about my parents. He would make it about how poorly they treat me. He would say horrible things about my sister. He would do all of this stuff. But then he'd swan out of the room and be this amazing, guy that everybody loved. And I would come out an absolute ball of nerves, terrified that my parents or my sister would do the behaviors that would then mean I would cop another round of this later. And then I'd be on edge. I'd be trying to micromanage the situation and control what was happening. And then more than likely, we'd drink too much or whatever it was. And, you know, but if he ever did anything to me, like he used to, I wouldn't even finish my dinner and he'd start eating off my plate. And I'd say to him, can you please wait until I've finished? And my parents would tell me off.
Ah.
Not him for doing shitty behavior. It was my fault
Mm.
because I was so wound up that they saw me as the problem. But this is typical domestic violence
Yes, it is.
stuff where
Mm-hmm.
you get separated. And my relationship with my family has never been the same since
Mm.
because they all took his side,
Wow.
or it felt to me like they took his
Yeah.
side. They say that they didn't, but I did not have any support at all.
Wow.
I was asked if I needed psychological help, if that I needed some time in a facility, and I was told that no one would ever love me again the way that he loves me.
Wow.
And my sister used to just say to me, it's okay just to fall out of love with someone. You don't need to make up all these stories, don't you?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, needless to say, I've also had to do a lot of work on that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
But again, because I had hidden it, in so many ways, I know that this is a result of my actions because I was hiding all of this stuff. I was keeping it all, I was helping him, I was supporting him in keeping it behind closed doors,
Yes. But if
because
you
I
really
was
think about it,
ashamed.
yes. But think about it, like the way when I
Mm,
think of you doing that,
yeah.
like to me, I completely understand why you would do
Mm,
that.
yeah.
Because you know what? It's also, I don't know if this was for you, but the
Mm,
concept of being with someone who
yeah.
is emulating that you're great, they love you. Now you're going to expose the fact that you're abused, basically on
Mm.
some level, it feels like your own shame. Like there's something wrong with
Oh, well,
you,
it's
like
put
being
on you.
bullied, right?
Yeah. Because
Like,
what it is, and he used to say, but I'm perfect, so the problem is you.
oh,
And so, I mean, red flag, hello. And I still remember saying to him right at the beginning of the relationship, there's this fine line between confidence and arrogance, and you've just crossed it.
mm,
And then I'd say to him, you can't even see the line.
mm,
Like, you know, and in the end, because I got so sick of saying it, I'd just go, line. And, but of course, it didn't change any behavior at all. But it was really fascinating, even from very early on. I clearly recognized that there was this arrogance there, this massive ego.
mm.
But the bit that really, I think, links the empath and narcissist together, which is obviously, again, so over talked about, and people are given these terms without actually being these things because
Ah, yes,
both are spectrums of behavior, the same way autism is a spectrum, the same way anxiety is a
mhm,
spectrum, the same way depression is a spectrum. It is a spectrum of behavior. We are all narcissistic, and that's why we can see it in other people. Now, it's when we're talking about the extreme narcissistic behaviors or the extreme empath behaviors. Now, I took on everything he said as a fault of mine. He used to tell me all the horrible things about myself, and I would own them, and I would then get wound up trying not to display those behaviors because, again, I'd been trained as a child
yes,
that there is this narrow band of acceptable behavior for a woman, and you do not veer outside of that.
yes,
And if you do, we will slap you back on that path quicker than you know, it'll make your head spin.
yes.
My mum used to say, I'll make your head spin, I'll get it so fast. And so,
Ah,
you know, this was that narrow band I was expected to walk. So when my ex husband was reinforcing this narrow band that was acceptable, I was just like, I am the problem because this narrow band doesn't feel comfortable for me. So
yes,
I am the problem. Of course, I'm the problem. I'm not fitting into this mold that other people have told me to fit into. And you know why? Because I'm human.
yes.
And because humans have these things called emotions, and no emotions are good or bad. They're all emotions that give us a full tapestry and a full experience of life. And so I was so busy trying to uphold this idea of perfection, and everything was about, well, what will other people think? Both growing up, it was, well, what would they think if that happened? Or what would, it was always about external.
Mhm.
What would they think? What will people think? And my ex-husband was the same. What would people think? You know, what would my parents say? What would your parents say? And I was like, oh my God. And so I did. I thought it was all me.
Wow. Yeah. Makes
And
so
so of
much.
course I'm the problem.
You know, it's so incredible because if you think about it, so many people come in here
Mm,
and like when we ask them about, we can ask someone about their childhood and they're like, "Oh, I had the greatest parents."
yeah.
And
Yeah.
they'll just say, "We had a great, everything, they taught me how to
Mm,
be well mannered, everything,
mm-hmm.
dinner was on the table, we
Yeah.
had, the proper holidays, all of these
Yeah.
things." And I always tell the therapist here that is ask more questions
Yes.
because the thing is the person who comes in and says, "Oh yeah, well they would hit me, well because I was bad,"
Yeah.
right? So it's like,
Yeah.
to me, that's all I could think of when you were saying it, is that you were programmed
Mm.
to be with a person who would continue that
To
lifestyle
control.
with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's breaking out of the program,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So tell us more. So how did you end up finally, um, you know, becoming recovered from being in this situation?
I think it was, I mean, look, and there are still times I'm terrified because I had to go from this comfort zone, which is completely not comfortable. And for most people, it's not. It is full of everything that you've done before that you think is the right thing to do. And therefore, you keep doing it because you think that's the way you're supposed to do it. So it's your known zone. It's not comfortable. It's just known. It's what you know. And everything outside of that is unknown. And so for me to look at leaving this marriage, one, I knew that my parents would be ashamed because you just don't get divorced. It's just not what you do. And two, then, actually leaving the marriage with no job because I'd been a full-time stay-at-home mother, with, it had been 8 years at that point since I'd had full-time employment. And my ex-husband's like, well, you should be able to go out and get a marketing manager job. And I'm going, I've been out of the industry for 8 years. And in that time, guess what's happened? Social media. I'm not a trained marketing person. I did communications, different field. So he's giving me all of this. You should be able to do this and you should be able to do that. And, you could earn this much. And I'm going, no, I can't, because I'd have to go and retrain. I'm starting from scratch because you've taken that from me. And every time I tried to get back into work through the marriage, there was something. You're taking time away from the family. You're not prioritizing the family enough. You're not looking after me enough. There was all of these
Yes.
other things that would come in. Again, that's that financial separation. They make sure I've got control of you, not just emotionally, but financially as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it was done deliberately, but I don't know how much was deliberate and how much was incidental. And so there was all of this stuff going on and it was terrifying, but I just knew, because I was so unwell, and I got to a point and I just ended up asking myself, is this the kind of love that you want your children to experience? Do you want them to be shown love? And look, I have to admit, I use the gender stereotypes within the family. I know that's the worst thing that can happen these days. But I said, is this the way I would want my son to
Hmm.
love his future partner? And is this the way I would want my daughter to receive love?
Yeah, I love that. That's good.
Now, then I ended up changing it because I realized that that's all gendered and you can have abuse on both sides and who knows who they're going to marry. So, it was, would I want my children to give or receive love in the way that love is being given and
Yeah,
received in this marriage?
exactly. Hmm.
So I did correct myself, by the way.
No, but you know what? I'll tell you something. You're funny. But you know what? If you think about it, like
Mm,
those things that he would say to you
yeah.
about, like, you're taking time away from the family, like all of
Hmm.
those words they sound good. They sound in
Yeah.
line with the way a loving mother would be or a loving
Yes.
wife would be. And I
Hmm.
always feel like dysfunctional people, they take hostages, they don't get into
Yes.
relationships,
Yeah.
right? And like the thing when you were saying about your kids, I have this question that I ask young women when they want to marry
Mm,
someone. I say, listen, this is like a little test you can
yeah.
ask yourself. If you were if this person never changed for the
Mm,
rest of their lives, would you
hmm.
want to marry them? The next
Yeah.
thing is, if you had children who were exactly like this person, would that be something you would want? And would you
Yeah.
want this person to fully and completely raise your children?
Yes.
And when most, you'd be surprised, they're like, oh no, that is
Yeah.
not what I want, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
But we're
how did you
sold this
yeah,
idea of
yes,
relationships
we are.
whereby, oh, that person completes me, and oh, that person's got these qualities. And, we make these lists of what we want in a relationship. And often it's because we're told we want it or we're trained to want it or whatever. And we make all of these lists about what other people can give us.
Yes.
And I did the same thing when I separated. I was very conscious that I did not want to be back with a narcissist. So then what did I need to change in myself? What did I need to heal in myself that would then not attract that?
Yeah.
And so I would work with my healers, therapists, all the people that I was working with to work on all of those traumas, all of those unhealed parts of myself, all of those unresourceful parts of myself, because I was not going back into that kind of relationship
Yeah.
ever. And then I realized I'm making this massive list of all these things that I expect this person to do or be and I'm going, that's completely unrealistic. I cannot have a list of what I want the other person to be for me. I can only look at what I need to be for me and how I want to show up in a relationship and how I can be for that person. That's the only thing I can control. And so I needed to start really becoming the kind of person who could then attract somebody who would respect and love the kind of person I was becoming.
Love it.
And that became my focus.
You know what I love? I love that because I think that we have not been taught that the first stop is us.
Mm.
We're
Well,
taught
that's selfish.
exactly. And you know, it is so crazy. Like, happiness is not a sin. Like,
No.
when we show up in our best selves, Amanda, like, that is when we can love the most. That's when we're
Yeah.
the most confident and generous. And
Mm.
right. And I think about, like, okay, like, if I love me,
Mm-hmm.
genuinely, not like
Yep.
that, cliche, like we hear all this, not a meme, love yourself. I mean, like, genuinely, like, really, like, I'm there for you, like,
Yes.
know ourselves, love ourselves, like,
Yeah.
go inward. And then our standard of love is created inside of us
Mm.
already. No, if somebody doesn't match it, we're not
No.
going to draw them to us.
No.
Giving ourselves respect. If you're sitting inside your head, like if I'm sitting there going, oh my God, that was dumb, what are
Mm.
you going to attract to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone who might resonate with thinking that
Mm.
you're dumb. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
and it's like, I even think when I'm like starting to be like a little snotty to my dog or something,
Mm.
I'll think, would I actually want a man in my life who would act like that? I don't.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't respect that in someone
Mm.
the way I'm acting right now. So I
Mm.
want to love and respect myself and the way I am, like what I want to be, the things that I want, we
Yeah.
attract who we
Absolutely.
are, right?
And also, I think it's really interesting because, again, the same way that you talk about, self love and self care as not being those memes, and they're not, they're really hard decisions about how I want to show up in the world, who I want to be, how I want to behave, what's right for me and what's wrong for me, what's the
Yes.
most loving thing I can do for myself right now.
Yes.
It's really hard decisions at times. It
Yes.
is really tough boundaries and enforcing those boundaries and having consequences for people who break those boundaries, whatever that may be. And that self-love. Now, in the same way that you talk about the way you do with your dog, for me, I look at things like, I might come in after a big day of work, and yesterday was a great example because I had my Instagram account hacked and had my afternoon hijacked from what I was needing to do for my business to firefighting that. And I didn't feel resentful yesterday, by the way. I actually handled it really well. But, I could have had those challenges thrown to me in the past, or, some days still with a long day if I haven't looked after myself. If I find myself going out to make dinner and I'm feeling resentful because everybody else is sitting on their computer screen and having some downtime after their big long days, and, you get into that kick the cat, grumble, grumble, resentful. I actually look at, okay, hang on. They're all grown up people. The youngest in the house is 12. They can wield knives and help me cut stuff up for dinner. I then am choosing resentment
Yeah.
over asking for help.
Yep.
And also, why am I feeling resentful? Because
Mhm.
resentment belongs to the envy family. So technically, I am looking at them and I'm envious of something that they are doing.
I
So
love
I'm
that.
envious of their downtime. So this puts me into choice then. Well, do I stay in my resentment? If I then sat down for 10 minutes, nobody would care. And if they came up to me and said, I'm hungry, I'd be going, well, you know where the food is. You can start making dinner for all of us, or you can wait until I finish my sit down. But most of the time, what I will then choose to do is I'll go, look, it's only another 20 minutes for me to, cut up some meat and veggies and get it on the plates. I can then do this work now, hand the dishes and everything else off to other people and the cleaning up off to other people, and I can sit down and then I don't need to get up for the rest of the night. Guess what my choice usually is? And some nights I don't catch it and I will be in the kitchen and I'll be like, grumble,
Yes.
grumble. Oh, hang on a minute. Okay. How am I not looking after myself? Because I know I'm the best cook in the house. I know I put the most love and care into the food, which then gets transferred into people's bodies. When I'm cutting it up with resentment, they're also getting my
Yes.
resentment. Now,
I
what would
believe
I
that.
prefer?
Yes. I
And
hear
when they're cutting it up with their, oh, I don't really want to be doing dinner, but Amanda's not doing it tonight, so,
yeah.
then we're all eating that as well. We're
Yes.
eating that lack of care, that lack of concern. So I prefer the food that I cook. And so again, what's my choice going to be? And it's just an example and a small one, but I remember how many days in my past life I'd get into resentment and it would just become this massive fight and argument because I had none of my needs met. And now I can go, okay, how am I not looking after myself? Because I'm the grown up here. I'm
Yes.
the grown ass woman.
Yes. Yes.
So
You
what do
know, I
I need
love,
to do?
yes. And you know, I'll tell you, when you're saying the things that you're saying are so important. I know that people who are
Mm,
listening, they all relate, because
mm,
isn't resentment such, it's such a an issue that women will
mm.
feel,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's such a big thing. And I loved what you said. It's in the family. I'm not sure the word you use, but with envy. It's in the camp of
Yes.
envy. And I
Yeah.
love that. That's such a profound statement. And you know
Because
what?
I
I
used to
always,
think it was with anger, but with
yeah,
Brene Brown's
mhm,
work, she found
yeah,
it's from the envy family. And
yes,
as actually, I think it was somebody she spoke to on a podcast. But anyway, that bit changed my life because I
yes,
then realized that every time I'm feeling resentful,
yes,
I'm actually envious. So I need to look at
yeah,
what are they doing for themselves that I want to be
mhm,
doing for myself? And how am I not giving myself permission to do what they're doing?
yeah. And you know what I wonder also, because you
Mm.
know that being, you know, coming as a fellow previous people pleaser myself. So don't you think, like, people pleasing? So now
Mm.
the
Yes.
thought is, oh, I'm the best one to make the dinner. They're all
Mm.
sitting there. I resent them for, because I'm not,
Mm.
I'm envious of them
Yeah.
now, but now if I don't make the dinner and I sit down, I'm going to feel guilty because I should be, that concept, I should be.
Yeah.
And then think about how they're all like cousins, like
Mm.
envy, guilt, and
Yeah.
then anger
Yeah.
at them because you feel guilty, and anger at yourself because you feel guilty. Like, the whole thing is a
Yeah.
mess, right?
Well, anger comes because we're feeling that our boundaries have been violated,
Mm-hmm.
or we're
Or
afraid, or
threat.
we're not wanting to look at the big
Mm-hmm.
emotions. So, in that moment, for me, my big emotion that tends to sit under anger is I am feeling unlovable. I am feeling unworthy of help. So,
Yes.
that for me sits under a lot of my anger is when I'm feeling unworthy or when I'm feeling not good enough.
Yeah. You know what? That's so true, isn't it? It's so
And
true.
so anger for me doesn't, the anger's the nice to express part because you feel like you're doing something. It feels
Yeah.
more active. As soon as that initial wave of anger has gone, because of course we can't do anything in anger because we're in the wrong part of the brain, but as soon as we can look at, okay, so why was I feeling angry? Was it because I'm afraid? Was it because I've had boundaries violated? Or is it because I'm feeling some of those really big emotions that I don't want to feel? I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling unlovable, I'm feeling unworthy, I'm feeling unsafe. Because
Yes.
all of those are reasons that anger comes up. So again,
Yes.
the anger in that moment, it's that resentment. Everybody else is doing what they want to do, but I can't because I'm expected to act in this way, and we should all over ourselves, as
Mm-hmm.
people
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
But should is one of those things. If you should have done it, you would have done it. Simple as that. But we use should as a way to put pressure on ourselves that is often the voices in our head that were put there either in childhood or by teachers or by society or
Yes.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They are the voices that we have internalized from other people's expectations. And so, again, every time that word for me comes in of a should, I'll be, hang on, why am I thinking I should in whatever way this is?
Yes.
Okay, let me have a think about this. Is this actually what I should be doing?
Yeah.
Because if I should have done it, I would have done it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I could have done it, well, would I have done it or wouldn't I? But the shoulds, the coulds, the mights, the oughts, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all of those words just add stress to ourselves. So again, and guilt for me has its place in our learning and development. But I think what we need to work out is it useful guilt or is it conditioned guilt? Because
Yes.
if it's conditioned guilt, we need to go, well, is that true for me?
Mm-hmm.
For me, that guilt comes from, my mum was a bit of a martyr as well when it came to sitting down and the woman did the work of the home and the dad went out to work, and there was that resentment there some of the time. I'm not saying all of the time,
Yeah.
but there was that resentment. And so again, when I look at it, when I'm sitting down, and she's gotten much, much better as she's gotten older. She's trained herself into resting, and she does
Yeah.
an amazing job now, which I love. I love seeing, again, that development. But
Yes.
when we
Yeah.
were young and she had a lot of stress and she had a lot of, balls in the air, I've been there.
Yes.
So I
Of course.
recognize where
Of
she was
course.
at, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
It does.
And so again, when I look at myself beating myself up for sitting down, I go, well, that's conditioned. Because when I was little, my mum didn't sit down because she was always sewing our clothes or ironing or cooking food or cleaning, or she was always so active. She did volunteer work all the time. I mean, the most productive woman, and yet very rarely gave herself permission to rest,
Mm.
almost until retirement.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I
Hmm.
learned that. I learned that
Yes.
because I thought, well, that's what productive people do. They do things. And so even when I had chronic fatigue and I was exhausted, I would feel guilty for sitting down or laying down in the middle of the day because I need to be productive and I'm not being productive.
Yes.
And so it becomes this learned behavior. And so you've got to look at your guilt. Am I feeling guilty because of something I've been taught? And is this actually something I want to be doing with my
Mm.
life? Do I want to do these learned behaviors differently and learn a new way of being? Or with that guilt, it's because shame is I am bad, guilt is I've done something bad.
Hmm.
So guilt is actually not a bad place to work
Hmm.
from, because if
Hmm.
I've not done it the way that I wanted to do it and I'm feeling a bit guilty about it, I can make reparation. If I
Hmm.
feel guilty about my actions in a relationship, I can make reparation. There's actually an action step that can be taken with guilt, which I think
Hmm.
is under spoken about and
Yeah.
underutilized, because people just go, oh, you shouldn't feel guilty, guilt's a bad emotion, all of that. But I think guilt can sometimes be useful.
Yes. Very valuable.
Yeah. And so when you
Don't you?
talk about that, I
You
think
know what I
that's the way
wonder?
those follow.
As you're saying it, what's coming to me is that
Mm,
the value of guilt,
mm,
what I'm thinking happens, because I'm thinking it just even of myself.
yeah.
If I feel guilt, the thing that happens, I think immediately is like this shame attack that's
Yes.
attached to the guilt. So the
Yeah.
guilt is a trigger for shame that
Yeah.
I'm not good because I didn't. You know what I mean? As
Yes.
opposed to I'm a human being,
Mm,
whatever. I'm going to do great things and bad and
yeah.
not great things,
Yeah.
right? And accepting it without judgment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I was just thinking that as you're saying it, like the attachment of shame
And
and
I
not
think
feeling good enough.
it's which one comes first. If
Mm-hmm.
your first response is, I'm not good enough because I did, then shame is actually your go to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a harder one to move away from.
Yeah.
So, in those examples, I try to say to people, well, what is the I? Because if we say I, we are not leaving room for anything else. But what
Mm-hmm.
is the I? Because if you can see the behavior,
Mm-hmm.
again, this gets a bit existential and a bit
Go,
esoteric,
let's do it.
but who is the I that is noticing that behavior?
Yes.
Where is the I? Because if you're noticing the behavior, you are not the I, you are the observer
Mm-hmm.
of who you think the I is.
Yes. Yes. And then I was actually going to bring that whole thing in, the wise observer. So
Yeah.
when you're doing, if we tied in, like we're
Mm,
describing, I have two questions because I
yes.
realize we have to like, how did you get out of your relationship
Yes.
that was abusive? That's one. And the other thing is, how does all of this, because I can hear you, all of this wisdom you have, this
Mm,
ties into the kinesiology.
yes. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm so interested because I have so many questions. So we'll go with that. Like if we were
Yeah.
gonna, um how did you get out
Mm.
and I would say create freedom for yourself? How did that happen?
It
Just if
was
someone's
really,
listening who,
really hard. And
mhm,
I'm just
yeah,
going to put that out there. I remember my psychologist saying divorce is not for the faint-hearted, especially when you're married to someone like you are. And I went, I know, but I cannot stay. you know I will die if I stay. And that's not being overly dramatic. Maybe it is a little bit, but I felt like I was getting so unwell that my only option was to leave the marriage because my body was just breaking down. I was not feeling human. And so basically what happened at the beginning of the January, within one of the sessions I think was on the Tuesday and one was on the Thursday with my kinesiologist and my psychologist, and both of them in sessions, obviously they don't talk to each other, so this was just synchronistic. They both said, I think you should look up narcissistic personality disorder. And we can't say any more than that because we're already sort of crossing lines by suggesting this, but go look up narcissistic personality disorder and we'll talk about it next session. And I read the stuff, and it was really strange when it came up again with whoever the second appointment was on the Thursday, because I didn't tell them about the appointment that I had on the Tuesday. And I'm like, and all like I just felt sick to my stomach because
Yes.
all of these cogs fell into place.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God. And because I don't like using labels, I don't
Yeah.
like
I get
labeling
it.
someone as this or that, because as I said, there's spectrums of behavior.
Yeah.
And also, I think if there was a possibility of getting tested, I think that they would be far enough on the spectrum to get a relatively good score.
It's such a polite way to put it.
But in that moment, I just said to him that night, I said, we're done. We're done. We cannot do this anymore. It is not good for us. It is not good for the children. We're done.
Were you afraid
And I was
to say it?
terrified. I was terrified. I honestly, hand on heart, did not know if I would wake up. I did not know if there would be actions taken. I did
You
not
mean
know
physically? You mean
how.
him harming you
Yeah,
physically?
yeah.
You know,
He was often like a caged lion, and I could feel that anger barely contained.
it's
And
very
so
scary.
I was terrified that if that and that was part of the reason I walked on eggshells for so
Yeah.
much of it, because that anger was massive. And I knew, even though I'm a strong woman, I have done a lot of boxing in my time. I'm strong. And I know that there is no way I could overpower a man in
Mhm.
anger. There
Yeah.
is no way I
You
could do it.
know, the concept, I just want to say to anyone who's listening, the
Mm,
idea that when you know that you can't be there anymore, and that
mm.
terror where you feel like you have to tell the person,
Yeah.
um, you know, the idea is the question comes to people like, you know, should I divorce a person? And
Mm.
kind of my answer, I heard someone say it that the person that you really the person who you're afraid to say you want a divorce from is the person to divorce.
Yeah.
Because, you
100%.
know, yeah, I mean,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So now what I wonder in that, and you had such bravery to do that, and there are going to be people on here who don't feel brave enough at today to
I
do
was
that,
not brave. And I can tell you that. I did not feel brave. I
but you
felt
did it.
terrified. I did not know how my life was going to be. I didn't
Yeah.
have a form of income. I didn't have anything. I
That's
didn't
why
even
you
have a
were
way of
brave, hon.
I didn't
That
even
is
have a
your
way of getting out
bravery.
of the house.
Exactly.
He
Brave.
s- he refused to move out of the house.
Of course.
And so for 6 months we were
Yeah.
separated under the same roof.
Yeah.
And he made
Scary.
it as difficult as possible for me to get money and to
Yeah.
get access to be able to get a rental. The day I moved into my rental, I both sobbed when I left the marital home, and I made sure that I had a number of people with me to move out of the home. And I made sure we were doing it when he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And
Smart.
then we moved into the other home, and I just remember just sobbing because it was, I'm out, I'm free. And it took a long time for the visceral reactions to not still be there. So he'd pull up out the front of my house, I'd hear his voice, and I would almost vomit.
Yeah.
Like I would get that physical
Yes.
visceral reaction. I could
Yeah.
feel him because
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
energetically sensitive. I could feel him when he'd come off the train,
Yeah.
and we were close to the train station on his way home almost, and I knew what time, and could feel my body
Yes.
tensing up, and I would feel the illness rising because of fear. um And it was terrifying. And also at the same time, it was the best thing I could have done. Now, navigating living in that house, I basically then spent 6 months in my bedroom, and he was telling the kids things like, you can't come in, you can't bother your mother when her door's shut. And I would have to, and they'd come up, they'd be in tears, and I'd be going, you are welcome anytime. The reason the door is shut is not to keep you out.
Mhm.
And so we had to have some conversations because the manipulation with the children started from day dot.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest part, because I knew that I'd been their shield for so long,
Yes.
that then in the times that he had them, that they would have no shield. And
Yeah.
that was terrifying for me. And also, I had to realize that they signed up to have both of us as parents. I believe in soul contracts. They chose us for a reason. We have things to teach them, they have things to teach us. And therefore, they chose this relationship. Now, what I could guarantee them was one happier home.
That's
I
good.
couldn't guarantee them two happy homes. I still can't. I can only guarantee that in my house they will be free to be themselves, that they will have somebody to fall on when times get tough, that they will have a soft place to land, that they are welcome anytime, that I will keep them and myself as happy as possible and as safe as possible. And that's all I can promise.
Yeah, I love
But
that.
that was still better than one festering, toxic household for us to live in together, because I could at least give them one safe haven.
I'll tell you, I just want to speak to that because I know you know all this, but I
Mm.
just want people who are hearing it, who, if you happen to be in that situation, one of the reasons why people stay is because they think that because they are the protector for the
Yeah,
child,
yeah,
and they know that they can keep things at bay by being
yeah.
there. But children know, they feel it.
Mm,
And it's interesting. What you just said is so profound because when they study, anything, sexual abuse, any kind of
mm,
abuse in childhood, when you have one safe haven, like you
yeah,
described, that is a saving grace.
yeah,
Like that right there. And you know what? If it's a constant and it's consistent throughout their young life, and when they get to the point where they don't have to go to the other person anymore,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's like 14. They can make decisions,
Mm,
you know?
yeah.
So I love how
Mm.
open and authentic you're being. And I kept saying it while you were talking because I refused for you to say you weren't brave. Because look at all the things you were up against and
I
with
see
such
it.
bravery.
I see it, but I guess the reason I say that I didn't feel it. Now, I
Yes.
know after the fact that yes, I was. I get that. But I guess I want people who, if they are in it,
Yeah.
to understand that you do not feel it. I
Yes.
didn't feel it for years after.
Yes.
It took me a long time to actually go, shit, that was big. like,
Yes.
and I
It
got through it and I was still
was.
alive. And
Yes.
so I guess that's why I made that distinction, is
Mm-hmm.
because for those who are in it, it doesn't feel
Yes.
brave. It
Yes.
you don't just get
'Cause you're
this
so
big,
scared.
knight with a sword feeling come over you and you're like, I'm on my quest, I'm out of here.
But
It
that's what I
doesn't,
mean. I feel
yeah.
like the fact that you were not feeling it, but you were doing it,
Mm.
that to me, that's such bravery.
But I also did it from a place of not feeling like there was any other choice,
Yes. It's so good.
because I was not going to be there. And so, yes, I see it as bravery now, but I guess there is
Like I
that
won't
thing
let
of,
you go. I
no,
keep
I
telling
and I
you.
get
Yeah.
that, but I guess because of where other people could
Yes.
be.
Yes.
It,
And you
it's
know what?
really
It's
important to understand you won't feel the bravery. You will
yes.
feel fear, you will
Yes.
feel terror, you will feel
Yes.
panic, you will feel
Yes.
lost, you will feel scared, you will
Yes.
feel all of the emotions under the sun.
Yes.
And I remember just for the first 6 or so months of me walking into that new place, I would smile walking in because I'm like, oh my God, it's just me. Like I can be me. I can
Yes. Love it.
and as time went on and I was able to unwind myself, and because I was studying kinesiology, I was constantly being balanced and, learning about the mind body spirit connection. I was learning about trauma patterns. I was learning why I'd allowed myself to get into this situation in the first place, the conditioning that trained me to go
Yes.
into that kind of place. I learned about all of this stuff, and it was just like this whole world opened up for me. And I reconnected to my spiritual self, which I had been connected to as a young child, but that I got cut off from.
Yeah.
And I was able to explore these parts of me that I'd hidden away because I was ashamed of them, or I'd cut off because they weren't socially pleasing, or I denied in myself because they were too bright and shiny, and that's not acceptable in a woman either. So I didn't explore all that stuff. And so in having that then distance and that space of my own, and delving into the study that kinesiology opened for me, the books it introduced me to, the other modalities I ended up studying because of it, all of this stuff, it was just leading me into this whole new world. And it was this world within myself of getting to know myself at a deeper level and understanding that I was never broken. I used to say I was broken. I wasn't broken. I was a person who had been trained and conditioned and programmed to be a certain way, and every single one of my unresourceful behaviors was because of some past trauma. And it was a way to keep me safe. It was a way to keep me alive, and it was a way to keep me accepted by the people around me,
Mhm. Yes.
even if it was unresourceful.
Yes. Let But it kept
Mm.
you safe. It was
Yeah,
survival skill, right?
yeah.
So when you describe your like you have this experience, right? And
Mm,
how would you tie in kinesiology to this? Could you teach us
mm,
about it? Like what it
yeah.
is you do?
So kinesiologist is considered a somatic therapy. So somatic therapies look at removing blockages and things that you're storing in the body. So it's like, imagine all the cliffs that you see along a beach where you can see the layers of,
Yeah, yeah.
compressed rock. We've got all that stuff inside us of unsuppressed, like unexpressed emotion, repressed feelings, suppressed stuff. We've got all sorts of things that we haven't wanted to look at because we're taught that emotions are scary, that we're not to trust the body, that we're supposed to think our way through life, that, I guess those more masculine aspects are the ones that we look at and revere. And by that, I'm talking archetypally. The
Yeah.
feminine ones are the ones that we're supposed to hide. So the feminine aspects are the creativity, the play, the joyfulness, the mystery, the wisdom, the hidden, the receptivity. All of that stuff is demonized and shoved in a corner, and you're not supposed to feel any of that. And what we're supposed to do is logic and control our way through life and think our way through life and do more of those masculine things to get ourselves through life. Now, what I found was that kinesiology is helping us unpack those layers that we've got within us. It's helping to understand where those blockages or stagnant areas of energy are. We find out why they're there, when they were put there, what emotions are stuck there, the stories we've created around that, and then how that is influencing our current state. Because that's actually the important bit. What you're going through now is being informed by our subconscious programming, which is over 95%
Mhm.
of our programming and our action and our beingness in the world is subconscious programming. I had a woman in yesterday who consciously gets it all, but she's got all of this subconscious stuff going on under the surface. So I said, yeah, you can consciously try and do it all you want. Again, the conscious mind is the masculine. But this subconscious, this 95% of you is not on board with it. So you can try and conscious your way through it all you want, but your subconscious is driving these directives.
Yes.
So until we deal with that and start to iron out the unharmonious
Yes.
aspects within that energy field, and we get those into a more congruent energy expression, a better electrical coherence,
I love it.
then you can start to change those behaviors,
Yes.
because then the conscious and unconscious are going to marry together, and they're not going to be these parts of us fighting for attention.
Yeah. Could you explain, just because I'm sure tons of people do
Mm,
not know what kinesiology is. So like, so
yeah.
how do you do it? Like,
Yeah.
could you describe it for us?
Yeah,
Like,
so we use manual muscle testing, and for those who want to see it in action, there's heaps of Google videos on it, so or YouTube or whatever you call it, that
it's
platform
when
that
you
we go
put your arm
to.
out and you,
And
right?
so yeah, so
Yeah.
we do different muscles though. So we learn pretty much all the muscles of the body that we can access from the external, and we put pressure on the muscles. So depending on what we're testing will depend on what muscles we use, because there's there's reasons for it. Different muscles speak to different meridians, different parts of the body, different emotions, all that sort of stuff.
Fascinating.
So we use muscle tone. And so if you think about your muscles, there are electrical currents going through your muscles. So if something is not stressful, well, that connection will get through. If something is stressful, or if it creates a disharmony in the body, then that muscle tone will not stay the same because the electrical signal gets interrupted. The brain and the body kind of go, oh, what was that? And you feel it in the muscle tone. And so we use that to read what's going on in the subconscious, because you can be thinking one thing and your body is telling you something different, and we're wanting to listen to the subconscious aspects of it.
Yes.
And again, the subconscious is not just between your ears, it is in every cell, every electron, every fiber of your being. It is in your auric field, it is in your chakra systems, it is in your physical body, it is in your organs, your cells, everything. And so we are looking at where, throughout the totality of the you that is, where is that stored? How is it being held in place? What are the emotions that are keeping it stuck? How is it relevant to today? And we find all of that information through the muscles.
Yeah.
And then we're able to use vibrational frequencies to shift that pattern. So whether that be sound or light or, color or other vibrational frequencies such as crystals, essences, essential oils, any of those kinds of things. And sometimes it'll be acupressure points, other points on the body that speak to different parts. So there's tons of different ways that we end up, I guess, changing that vibrational structure, marrying the subconscious and conscious together so that you don't need to display those unresourceful behaviors anymore.
I love it. And also,
Mm.
do you use like Bach flower remedies?
Yes, so that's some of the vibrational essences we use.
Yeah.
So I've got
Mhm.
I've got so many. I've got bark, I've got the Australian bush flower, I've got sky flowers, I've got heaps of them.
Do you like study? So because I remember when I was young, I explained to you, my
Yeah.
mom would do all this. She'd be like, well, you need this Bach flower remedy of this, and it would be a particular thing. And I just think the whole so much we were discussing this earlier
Mm,
that we've been taught into what I believe is kind of this mediocrity of
yeah.
medicine,
Mm.
and just everybody following this path that isn't really resolving the core issue,
No.
right?
They want to get rid
And
of symptoms.
yeah,
We want to look at what the root cause is. So,
yeah,
the way that I look at the medical model is, you've got diabetes. Why do you have diabetes? Because you've got these symptoms. Why do I have these symptoms? Because I've got diabetes. It's this closed loop
exactly,
system.
exactly.
And what we want to do is break out of that closed loop system. Okay, yeah, go and get your treatment for your diabetes, but let's look at what the switches were,
Yes,
and what order were they flipped in
yes,
to actually have your diabetes express itself in the physical body. Because this would have started years before it actually expresses in most parts.
love that.
And
Yep.
so we want to know. And, I could have a genetic predisposition for, I don't know, certain types of cancer or diabetes or whatever. But it doesn't mean that I will ever physically express it. It just means I've got markers for it.
Yes.
But what needs to happen is certain stresses need to flip certain switches to allow that genetic expression to physically manifest.
Mhm.
So, by that token, I truly believe if we do enough work and if we unpack enough layers and if we turn the switches the opposite way, on the
Yes.
way back,
Yes.
I believe we can unexpress things as much as
Mhm.
we've been able to express them. But
Yes.
what and the pharmaceutical industry have stated publicly that they want every person in the world on at least one medication, if not multiple. That is their business model. Of course it is their businesses. They're for-profit businesses. So they've said we want everybody on at least one medication. And you look at things like vaccine programs. People are already on however many medications because they've had these things in their arms. So great, they've already got lifelong clients. And you then add in, all these other things. And there are certain medications that once you go on them, you can't come off them because it's too
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah.
So again, they're creating a consumer base that needs to keep consuming. That is their job. And you know what? They're a business. And also, I think there are other ways. Now, some of my clients are on certain medications, and I'm like, yes, you need them. They are saving your life, they are necessary.
Mm.
And there are also a lot of people out there who are on medications that they do not need, that
Yeah.
they do not know what happens, and that
Yeah.
they are not being monitored by the correct people for their highest good. And
Yes.
when you look at also, say, you're seeing, I don't know, 4 different specialists and they've all got your medications, a lot of those specialists then don't talk to each other. And these medications can sometimes be competing. And
Yeah.
often when clients come in, I'll just go onto a website. I
Yeah.
think it's called drugs.com. You put
Yeah.
it in and I'll go, see all your symptoms. And we scroll through and it's all of the things on that side effects list.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Wow.
you go, you don't need to be seeing, well, we'll see you for all the emotional stuff that's going on and for what's going on
Mhm.
underneath, but you also need to talk to your doctor and go in with this website and say, I've looked it up and here's all the symptoms I'm having. I think we need
Yes.
to look at our medication. But people don't do that because they trust their doctor and they trust the pharmaceutical companies for some strange reason, even though they're businesses. They're for profit. They're not for profits. If they were not for profits, maybe we could,
Yeah.
I don't
Right. Yeah.
know.
But don't you think we expect almost like not to be well, or this
Yeah.
concept of like aging and like this belief system, right?
Because it's a sick care system, it's not a
Yeah,
healthcare system. They
exactly.
do not want you healthy, vital, and well because then they don't have customers. So
Yes.
they are looking at you being not sick. So if when I went into my doctor to get all these blood tests done to find out what was happening physically, they went, "You're one of the healthiest people we've seen." Blah 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 blah. I'd take the same test results to my naturopath, and she'd go, "Oh my goodness, you are deficient in this," because
Wow.
her
Yes.
she's looking at getting me to be healthy and vital and well.
Yes.
She is
Yeah.
not looking at me being not sick.
I love it.
But the
Love it.
levels that they have, and medical doctors out there have the same kind of thing. I think I was listening to Mark Hyman's podcast at one point. He says exactly the same thing. I mean, this is not a secret. The medical industry have not sick as their marker.
Mhm.
So the vitamin C levels they expect in your body are so that you do not express scurvy. That's not
Yeah.
you being healthy and well.
No.
That's you
No.
not
I
expressing
take like
scurvy.
so much vitamin C, like a wild woman. It's like,
Yeah.
like I want to
Yeah.
drip. I do. They
Yeah.
have them.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
So like if
Yeah.
I were to come into you or
Mm.
just anybody who's listening and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, I'm just tired,
Yep.
like I don't feel great. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sick, but I'm not really super jazzed with my life. Like what
Mm-hmm.
would you do? Or I have that question, they walk in, they're with you physically.
Yep.
Then I saw that you also do it virtually. So I would love to
Yes.
hear that. What do you do virtually and what do you do? To
Well,
explain.
what I do virtually and in person is exactly the same.
Okay. Good.
So
Yeah.
it's
Could you
just we've
tell?
got a
Yeah.
computer between us. So the way I'll explain how I tap into people virtually first, because that will help people
You want
understand
to do
the
it to
energy
me? What do
aspect.
you do?
So
I'm
what I
afraid.
do, well, we're already doing it
Yeah.
now.
Right.
You are tuned into my radio station and I'm tuned into yours, and we're expressing ourselves through,
Yeah.
we can see each other, we can read each other's body language, we can hear each
Yeah.
other's voices, we have an energetic connection. So that is the first one, is I tune into that radio station. But then also, if you imagine I'm taking my energy field and throwing it like a blanket over your energy field so that I can read what's going on in your energy field and muscle test on myself without like mixing our energy fields. So some other kinesiologists will surrogate your energy, which the same way as a surrogate pregnancy, it's like you take on that energy and you read it sort of through your own field. Now, because I've done some work with a psychic and mediumship mentor, I find I get better results and clearer energy if I think about throwing my energetic blanket over you. And energy is non-local.
Yes.
Energy doesn't, like, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, it's the same way that I'm still amazed at how the internet works, because I'm like, oh my God, but I'm doing the same kind of thing. I'm
Exactly.
tuning into your radio station, I'm throwing an energetic blanket over you. It's just that obviously when when someone's in the room with me, we're doing it at a
Yeah.
much closer distance.
Yes, true.
But I've had clients who are in the next suburb who see me online.
Yeah.
So,
So what do
it's
you
personal
do? So
preference.
now you threw the
So
and I
then
felt it when you did that. I could
we
feel.
have the chat. We have the
Mhm.
we have just a chat about what's going on, and I listen to not just what people say is going on, but also what they're not saying. And again, the same thing that you were saying, people will talk about their upbringing. Oh, it was amazing, it was this, it was that, it was the other. Okay, so and let me ask about this and let me ask about that.
Right.
And I trust my intuitive nudges. So I will have a question drop in and I'll go, I don't know why I need to ask you this, but here's my question. And they will go, oh my God. And so
Right.
I work a lot with those intuitive nudges. And then I want to find out what they want, because they're coming to me because they don't want to be where they are.
Yeah.
So I want to know, what do you want?
Mhm.
Because what we look at in kinesiology is what we are moving towards. And then we want to know what is stopping us from getting there.
Perfect. Yeah. I got it.
Because you can access whatever goal you want, but if you've got all these blocks in the way, it's going to take you a lot longer, it's going to be harder, or you're not going to be able to see it, or you're going to give up, or whatever. So we want to clear those blocks out the way, whatever they are. And so I want to find out what they want. But most people will give us a list of wants that are don't wants. I had one yesterday, it was perfect. She said, oh, I want this to be easier.
Oh.
I don't want to feel judged. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel the other. I don't want to do this. And it's just, okay.
That's not what you
So
want.
now you need to tell me what you want, because you're giving me your wants as a big list of don't wants.
100%. Isn't that what the world is doing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, this is where language becomes so important. So I listen to all of that and we kind of formulate an idea of where we're heading to. Now, I do like to put a goal together. And also, if we've got enough information, I don't always put a goal in, because we want to clear what the priority stuff is. And then I'll get them up on the table and we'll start working. So fully clothed, it's just, I test the muscles, and I just start asking questions. I make sure that they're fully present in the room energetically, and we do what's called switching at the start. So we're basically getting them 100% present, making sure that they're in their body, that they're not energetically beside themselves or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then we just start working on what's the priorities. And then, again, I don't want to fix the first thing I find, because that could be masking something else. So I keep digging
Mhm.
until we get to, okay, this is where we need to clear today. And then on the way back up, I check all of the things that we found. And if they're not clear, then I might need to do another correction on something else. And so it really is kind of trying to follow the dominoes and the breadcrumbs to what is the priority issue to clear today, and then clean up on the way back up.
I love this is like therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what
But
you want your
energetic.
therapist. Yeah, it was what you
Yeah.
want your therapist to do, is like not stop at the first, like, oh,
Yeah.
I was pissed at the cashier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, right?
Yeah.
So what if you don't mind me asking, I'm curious. So
Mm.
like when you how do you clear it? Like, so you do the muscle test, and
Mm.
you were saying there's so many different ways
Yeah.
that you do it.
Yeah.
Like so when you keep going, so let's say
Mm.
can you give us an example? Like, let's say,
Well, most of the time it will go back to a certain age. So it'll be
yeah,
the first age that you experienced it, or it's not even the first age you experienced it. I'll call it the priority age for clearing,
Yeah.
because sometimes it may have taken a little while before it actually became the habit. And then this event happened and it really anchored it into
Yeah.
your
That makes
subconscious.
sense.
So that will be the one that we then clear,
Yeah.
and we'll find the emotion around it. We'll talk about the relevance of that to now.
Yeah.
So how is that behavior being expressed now?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it expresses slightly differently,
Yep.
and they don't always put two and two together, of course, because sometimes we don't. And then we do the correction after we've got the awareness,
Yeah.
and whatever that correction is. So through any of those vibrational means that I mentioned before.
This is just so wonderful, and
Mm,
I love how you're introducing people to kinesiology, and this is
mm,
such an important thing. I'm thinking, oh my
yeah.
gosh, I should have a kinesiologist here. Holy shit, what am how did I miss this? Right? But and if you were here, I'd be like, you gotta come here. But so let me ask you, like,
Mm,
also your book.
mm,
I would love to, would you be able to, what really like just hit my heart
mm,
was the marriage, as you use that language, of
mm.
the divine and messy.
Yeah.
Because I think we have separated this so far as
Mm,
human beings.
yeah.
And when I heard that or read that that's your book, I was like, oh my gosh, like we can be divine and messy. That's so good. Like
Yeah.
that's such a great thing for everyone here to know. I love it.
Mm.
So could
And
you
I
explain
think,
what your book is like, or
yeah.
how you can be divine and messy?
So I think, to explain it, I guess in a then and now type
Hmm.
situation, back in my previous life, I denied my divinity. I disconnected from my divinity. I didn't believe that I was divine, certainly not. And there was no real connection to something greater than myself. I was messy as hell, but trying to paper this or hold up this facade that I had my shit together, that everything was going fine, that I was in a loving relationship. And it was killing me to do so. Like, it was physically exhausting to constantly be, you know, the person that you see on the ad with the perfectly clean house and the perfectly behaved children and the perfect marriage. And, I had this big facade that I was holding up. And so I was ignoring and denying my messiness. And my human experience was hard as hell, really hard. Now, the more I've tapped into my divinity, the more I've accessed that divine within myself, and the more I've accessed the divine outside myself, the more that I have acknowledged that life is messy, that I am going to make mistakes, that I am going to use unresourceful behaviors, no matter how much of this work I've done, and that's okay, because those parts of me were trying to keep me safe. They were parts of me that have been traumatized or damaged, or, just they're not resourceful anymore. The more that I can acknowledge and love those parts of myself and parent them into feeling safe, into feeling useful, into feeling necessary within myself, the easier my human experience has become. And the less, funnily enough, my messiness actually comes out in, this emotional vomit over other people.
I love that.
It's a much more, we talk about it in kinesiology. We move from reactivity to responsible,
Yeah,
to having the ability to respond appropriately.
yeah.
And so we move from this reactive state into a responsive state. And that's really what the messiness has done. The more that I have accessed the divine, the more that I have loved and honored the messiness within myself. And the more that I have accepted and loved those, both the crappy parts of me and the light parts of me, the more that I've owned the totality of who and what I am, the easier my human existence has become. And so in the book, I guess it's short, bite-sized chunks of chapters. It is, I do go into some deep esoteric stuff. I do talk about, that as within, so without.
Mm.
Aspect, but it's very much about some of the psychological stuff that gets us where we are, some of the emotional stuff that gets us where we are. I talk about, boundaries and the challenge of self-love, that it's not this, rainbows and unicorns and commodification and capitalization stuff. It is really loving yourself at a deep level. It's about understanding, our triggers and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really what I put into practice
Yeah.
to literally move from hating myself to loving myself.
Yeah. So beautiful.
Yeah.
I'll tell you when one of the most profound changes in my own life was, you may not think I think you'll agree it's a
Mm.
big deal, but it sounds small, was when I just decided I just removed right and wrong out of my vocabulary. And
Mm.
I decided to be okay with anything wrong, bad, mistakes. I mean, it's such a cliche thing. We hear so much, oh, mistakes you learn, which is true. But I really mean it like on a very deep level, like to be able to be wrong. And just if someone said this, anything negative about me, to me, just to own it and be,
Mm.
and that's okay. Like really being okay with that. It completely changed my whole life.
Yeah.
Just that
But
acceptance of
those
self.
those simple shifts, and I talk
Yeah.
about that as the simple shifts that create your quantum leaps. It's
Yes.
not the that was also going to be potentially the title of my book, which I went against. But it's those tiny little 1% changes that we make that find us on a completely different path very, very quickly.
Yes.
And you're right. What we are taught and the way our brain wants to work is right, wrong, good, bad, yes, no.
Yes.
But it's like we're working in black and white. Now, just open up the color thing on your computer and look at the grayscale and look at the Pantone chart. And if we're just working in black and white, how much of this world are we missing?
Yes. Yes.
When you think about that whole grayscale and all of the Pantone color chart that exists, we've got a lot that we're missing.
Yeah. And don't you
And
love
that's the
people
way
who
that
are
you want to
messy?
start looking at it.
I'm sorry I interrupted
Yeah,
you.
no, no, no,
Don't you love,
absolutely.
like, I love people who are messy.
But
I
we
love
all
when I'm
are.
messy. Like, isn't that the
Mm.
person you embrace? Like, that's how I
Yeah,
feel, right? Just, I don't mean messy, just like real,
yeah.
authentic, vulnerable, right? That's
When people can only become their true authentic selves when they understand what their defense mechanisms are and why
yeah,
they're using them.
yeah.
And once you've cracked through your defense mechanisms, then you can start to express your authentic self. I never knew what my authentic self was. I was like, who the fuck is that? Excuse my
Go,
language.
I don't
I'm
care.
sorry.
I don't care. Do it.
But I
Go.
was. I was
Yeah.
like, who the fuck is my authentic self? Everyone
Yes.
keeps telling me to be authentic. Just be you. I don't know who I am. You're
Yes.
just fucking kidding me, aren't you?
Yes,
Like,
I
I'm
hear
not that
you.
wise. And all of a sudden, it was when I started recognizing what are those defenses that I have up? Do I need them? What are they actually doing for me? How am I using them for good, for evil, whatever it is? It was as I started moving through those, I started going, oh, okay, now I'm getting an idea of who I am. And now I can start expressing that more in the
Yes.
world.
Yes.
But we've got to understand what's sitting under the surface and break through. Let's face it, 100% of us is conditioning and programming and all of that stuff. We've just got to work out which programs are working for us and which programs we need to delete from our system.
Exactly. We're
And
so
which,
automated. It is it,
yeah,
right?
and which bit's me and which bit's my trauma? Well, all of it's me and all of it's my trauma.
Exactly.
But how do I want to be expressing that in the
Yeah.
world? And is there a more resourceful way to do it that harms people less?
Yeah. And like just the concept that we actually have the power to do it. Like we
Mm,
actually
yeah,
can.
yeah.
I love the quote by Alvin Toffler. He says the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. It'll be those who cannot learn. That's our program.
Mm,
Unlearn and learn
mm,
again. Like,
yeah,
and he wrote that forever ago. Just it's just
yeah,
like such a, and we have this power to have so much of the life that we really actually want, that we're meant to
yeah,
have, that we're creating. Like we can create anything.
yeah,
It's just crazy. So
yeah.
I could talk to you
I
basically
know,
forever.
I
I
know.
think that you've opened up the world, I'm sure, to so many people listening and to
Oh, thank
myself
you.
as well. Cause I just like love what you're doing. And
Thank you.
would love to know how people can access you,
Mm,
how, I mean, obviously your book, we're going to have it all written in there, but
mm.
can you tell us what where people can find you, how they can
Yeah.
utilize your great wisdom and all of that.
So I am at amandakate.com.au. So written exactly the way it sounds, amandakate.com.au. And all of my social links are there. So that's the easiest way to find me.
I have a question that has nothing to do
Mm-hmm.
with anything.
Yes.
I'm just so curious, and I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody else is. All right. So, wherever you grew up, and the fact that you grew up in a really super polite system, right?
Mm.
Now, culturally, were you growing up
Yes.
in a very culturally polite system,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. So
Yes.
now you notice how when you hear people like, I know in America, like we'll hear people like, and then we'll hear them like cursing, like just like as dirty as like whatever. Do you think that is the like response to this like very polite, you know,
Mm.
environment that then it skyrocketed like this like great like deep, well, I don't know how you'd
Oh,
put it,
look,
dirty.
I consider myself a spiritual sailor.
Oh, I love it. Right? So wait, where did you
Because
grow
our
up in the
spiritual
UK?
people
You didn't grow
shouldn't
up in the
swear.
UK though, right? Where'd you grow up?
No, no, I grew up in so I grew up in Perth and Adelaide in
Yeah, but
Australia, and then I was in the
yeah.
UK for 11 years, and then I've been back in Melbourne for 11 years.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure because I
Yeah.
know that like the UK, like they'll be like cursing, like saying the
Yeah.
dirtiest stuff.
Yeah.
And I love it
Australia
because they're
does
saying it in
too.
the most polite way.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
cool. So I was
Well, we
just
use
wondering.
we use we use the worst words for people we love and people we hate. So, it can be the biggest compliment and it can be the biggest insult depending on who's throwing it at you.
I get
So,
it.
it's just extra colorful words that we can use. And
But
you
I
know what?
love
I
that.
look at it with offense. You are choosing your offense.
100%.
And so if you're offended, that's not on me. You need to look at what is activating and triggering within you that's offending you because it's not my problem. I'm not offended by it. Now, if I'm throwing it at you as an insult, that's a different story. And I need to look at my crappy behavior there. But realistically, for the most part, if we're offended, it's
I
it's our
love it.
problem.
You know what it is? Because I was wondering, because because it's like these two like extremes,
Mm,
right? But
yeah,
and when you were I'm gonna go off on another tangent.
that's all
I'm
right.
trying to end this show. Okay, but this other thing, like in the Course in Miracles, it says, and I have it on my whiteboard. I am responsible for what I see. And I'm
Yeah,
not even going to go to the rest of that, what it says,
yeah.
but think about it. We're all like what you just said,
Mm,
like we can be offended or not.
mm,
If I'm coming in hot, like I want to be offended, I'm going to be.
yeah.
I can find
Oh,
you could
oh
find
yeah.
a gazillion things wrong with me right now where you roll your eyes.
But we all
Right?
could. Let's
But
face it.
if
If
we
we're
want
looking
to,
for it, we're going to find
yes,
it. Because
whatever you
again,
look
that's
for.
that's the physiological part. That's the part in the brain, the reticular activating system that assigns importance because we can't take in all the information around
Yep.
us. So we only take in what's important to us. So if we're looking for a fight, we're going to get one. If we're looking for a
Yes.
fence, we're going to get one. If we're looking for, you know, if we're giving other people grace and compassion, knowing that everyone is going through something, then we're going to find more grace and compassion.
Yep.
It depends
Exactly.
on what we're putting our importance on. And I can tell you now, my importance used to be on trying not to offend people. So guess what I did all the time? I offended people because I was constantly holding all this stuff together, trying not to offend people and trying not to say the wrong thing. And so what I was looking for was examples of people being offended by what I said, or me doing the wrong thing, or me being told off for doing the wrong thing,
Yes.
because that was where my focus was, because I was so afraid.
Yes.
Now I'm looking for connection, I'm looking for grace, I'm looking for
Yeah.
empathy, I'm looking for compassion, I'm looking to extend that to other people. So if
Yeah.
somebody's rude to me or someone's, cuts me off on the road, yeah, okay, my first example is still, what are you doing that for? I'm
Yeah.
not perfect. But then it's like, I wonder what they're going through. I wonder how
Yeah.
bad their life is that that is the way that they feel they should treat
Yeah.
people.
Right.
It's
100%.
not about me.
Nope.
It's about what's going on in their life because I've not done anything to them.
Right. Right. It's very true.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can say that I just feel like, my life is advanced and more fulfilled from knowing you and spending time with you.
Oh,
I really mean it.
thank
I
you,
really am
darling.
grateful that you came on the show. I'm grateful to that you shared, what you know in your heart, and just everything about you is just really delightful and just wise. And I just really
Oh, thank
appreciate
you.
you. And I
Oh,
know I know everyone listening does as well. I'm sure people have gotten so much out of this. So I just want to thank you really so
oh,
much. It's an
thank
honor
you.
to have
Look,
you.
the work you're bringing into the world is wonderful as well, and we appreciate you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, love. So it is a wrap.